Hey, good morning, folks. Loan Coach Kelly here, coming to you with today's episode of North Coast Coffee Chats. I've got my partner in crime with me today.
David West, your solar best.
That's right, Dave West. And so we're members of NCNG, North Coast Networking Group, and we bring this podcast to you each week, where we meet members of our community who are entrepreneurs, entrepreneur-minded, and entrepreneur-spirited, and are also part of this NCNG business networking group that we have. And so today, we've got our special guest, Skip Coomber. Skip and his partner, Jonathan Roth, are brand new members to our group. So we're looking forward to getting to talk to you today, get to know a little bit about your business, share your travels and your trials and tribulations as an entrepreneur. So welcome, Skip.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you on board today. So Dave, you want to go ahead and kick this one off today?
Absolutely. Let's warm up and dive in. So Skip, tell us about your journey. How did you come to forming Coomber Consulting, but ultimately before that, become an entrepreneur here in North County, San Diego?
Well, it's a long story. I'm an attorney. I went to law school not to become an attorney, but I felt it would be a good education. Found out that being an attorney was being a business person. And so I've enjoyed a very good career as a business attorney. I run family offices, which means I represent very, very wealthy people, generally one family at a time. I call that service pets to jets.
Okay.
So I have bought and sold jets and jet shares and yachts and built estates for people in different places.
Nice.
Along the way, I did a number of different investments. We got into the wine business. We invested in a facility in Buellton, California, which is by Solvang in Santa Barbara County, where we 7 of us built this big facility where winemakers can pay to have their wines made there or to make their wines there. So
nice.
As owners, we started having them make wines for us. We were really fortunate. We had a great winemaker there. It was a huge facility. We were able to get really good grapes. So we were able to, our first wine we got a rating for was a 95 back in 2012, and that was before rating inflation. 95 really meant something.
Got it.
So it was fun. We have a winery now in downtown Oceanside. We call it an urban winery.
Urban winery?
Urban winery, meaning that the connotation is it's in a downtown area. No vines. We purchase all of our grapes.
Okay.
And so
Where's it located?
It's on downtown Oceanside, on 611 Mission. We bought a building in downtown Vista, and we'll open that within a month. The same thing, it'll have live music 7 nights a week, and people come in. It's a great experience for them. And of course, we have lots of pretty good wine that we make. It's fun. So
awesome.
So along the way, we went through COVID, and of course, we were shut down initially, being a winery. But we, being the entrepreneurs that we are, they had this thing called essential businesses. So we went to the local sign company. We had them write essential products sold here. And I went to Walmart, 4 Walmarts every morning and bought the makings of a hand sanitizer and little jars. And we sold that. We gave a bunch of it to the Oceanside Police Department. And we declared ourselves an essential business.
Nice.
And so we were able to stay open on a limited basis, and then we eventually went to live music 7 nights a week. We took the opportunity where they said you could build little structures so that people could dine outside. Well, we took that opportunity to build a 72-foot by 20-foot steel superstructure over our patio, and that's how we were able to have live music 7 nights a week, weatherproof. Anyway, so we did one PPP loan. We didn't qualify for the second one. Then my friend told me about the Employee Retention Tax Credit Program. And I said, I looked at that. We didn't lose money. He goes, no, read it again. You don't have to lose money. There's a second test, which we now call the government orders test. And almost every business qualifies for that. It basically, in the CARES Act, which it created the PPP and it created the ERTC. Employee Retention Tax Credit Program. So PPP was designed to save businesses, keep them in business. It worked. I talked to business owners every day, kept them in business. The second one was a promise by Congress. If you'll keep your employees on payroll during this deep, dark time we're about to go through, we will reward you by returning payroll taxes. And here's how it's going to be. The problem is at the time, that was March 27th, 2020, you had to choose between the PPP or the ERTC, and PPP had all kinds of publicity. So everyone did the PPP. 9 months later to the day, on December 27th, 2020, Congress passed the Consolidated Appropriations Act. And in that act, it said you could take both. And you have to take the PPP loan into account. I won't bore you with the specifics of that, but it has a negligible impact on the amount you can receive. So as it currently sits, a business or nonprofit, an employer that qualifies can receive up to, as you've read in the advertisements and seen, $26,000 per employee. So we found a tax law. My CPA said, I can't do this for you. So I searched around and I found a tax law firm that was doing this. And it was really great. It was an elegant experience. And I said, no, you have to make money. How do you get paid? They said, well, we charge a contingency fee of 20% of what you receive after you receive it. So I have nothing to lose, right?
Sure.
And then they got us this money, and we were thrilled it was found money. And then I saw the 20%, and I thought, wow, I don't mind paying it, and most business people won't.
Right.
So I called them up and I said, listen, I'm an attorney. I've been on a public board, on the audit committee. I'm in a bunch of chambers of commerce. I know people. I network. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll make you an offer. We'll partner. I'll bring you business and we split those fees. That's the entrepreneur's part of me, right?
Right.
They said, yes, because they're not networkers. They just sit at their desk all day long. So I started bringing them businesses and nonprofits, and they're waiting 6 months for these checks. So I'm going a long time doing a lot of work.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, and then all of a sudden the checks started coming in. My clients were so happy. They started referring me to their friends that own businesses and nonprofits. The nonprofits all know each other in one general area.
Right.
So to date, I have between 300 and 400 clients, and they're receiving. They're all in total receiving, I think, about $150 million now. So they're happy. I'm making a lot of money. It's really fun. I travel three weeks a month at least now. I go to the Midwest where they introduce me to business owners. And so I go to Omaha and Kansas City. So sorry, that's a long little diatribe there. But that's the background. That's how I got to this point in time where I'm working with people like Jonathan Roth and meeting people like you and explaining to them that this is a legitimate government program. People get concerned. Well, is this a red flag for an audit? No, it's not. The tax law firm that I use, has processed this for over 12,000 businesses and nonprofits. They've had 4 audit letters in 2 years.
That's amazing.
The thing is that PPP and EIDL had a lot of fraud. It's really hard to commit fraud with this for someone because all we're doing is going back to the 941s that they filed, the quarterly employment tax returns from 2020 and 2021. So you've already given them that information. There is a CPA firm in Utah it's now a was firm, because they persuaded over 1,000 Uber drivers to let them form LLCs for them, and then they made up employees. And they submitted these 941s 2 and 3 years later. Well, they're all going to jail now. And so we just had that happen in Florida. So there's really not a lot of fraud, although you may have heard that last Friday, the commissioner of the IRS said we are concerned about rampant fraud, and we're going to put a moratorium on processing new ERTC applications. And applications means 941Xs, amended quarterly tax returns, until at least December 31st. We have to figure out how to deal with all this fraud. And in the same press release, they said, in fact, we have had 252 investigations of fraud, leading to 6 convictions and or accusations of fraud going to court. Well, let me explain to you. That's 252. They have processed over 2.6 million businesses. So as a percentage, that is 0.00009. Clearly, this isn't about fraud.
Yeah.
And so what's happening is the commissioner was yelled at by the House Ways and Means Committee, the subcommittee overseeing the ERTC. And he had said in a press release the day before, this was on July 27th, that they were 99% caught up on the ERTC. And then at the meeting, the members of Congress are going, wait, your website says you have 600,000 that you're behind. So they said your credibility is severely in jeopardy here. So what we think happened is He's getting yelled at. So Congress people, you know your local Congress people, right? Because you go to Chamber of Commerce meetings, you go to meet the city official meetings, and they go there, and who donates to them? Other than big business, it's local business owners who they've met at a local thing. Well, when they're waiting over a year for these checks that they desperately need, they're not happy. So they call their congressperson. Congress people call the commissioner. So my theory is that this was a way that he could get caught up somewhat. And so for 3.5 months, they're going to take the applications, but they're not going to start processing. And processing, in their parlance, means that they assign it to an agent. So they're just going to sit in a stack. So I've met a number of business owners who say, well, gosh, we're just going to wait and see what happens. Well, that's the wrong attitude.
Yeah, that's just delaying.
You want to get in queue right now. In fact, that's the best thing that could ever happen to my clients, because we're getting them in right now. And when the floodgate opens again, they start processing them, they'll be the first one, and there won't be a bunch of other people involved there. So is the ERTC going away? The commissioner of the IRS cannot get rid of an act of Congress. His job is to implement this act of Congress. So it has no bearing on the how long the ERTC will continue. Could Congress get rid of it? Sure, they can do that at any point in time.
Right.
Now, when they got rid of the PPP and the EIDL, they just made an announcement one day: no new applications. So you want to have your application in there.
Yeah, at least it's stamped with the date that you receive it, and
That's
you know
right.
that you're in the
That's
pile,
right.
and at some point you'll be processed. Is there a set amount of funds that are available for that, or is it just a matter of do you meet the qualifications or not? And if you do, then the funds are there for you.
It's the latter. So typically in an act of Congress, they have to identify a pool of money, where it's coming from. They characterize this as a tax credit.
Got it.
So there's no
Not
pool
really
of
a
money.
pool of money then.
The only drop dead date is you have 3 years from the following April 15th to amend 941s. So 2020, the first of the 2 years, will go away next April 15th, 2024, and then 2021, which is worth $21,000 per employee, won't go away until April 15th of 2025.
Got it. So there's still basically 2 years ultimately to go back for amended returns.
Yep.
Now, how many employees does the company have to be eligible for that?
Well, it's a good question. You'll see these advertisements from what we call these ERTC mills that that's really what's upsetting the IRS commissioner. They'll say, 10 or more employees. We do it for businesses with 1 employee, because probably the business that has only 1 employee, that $26,000 means a lot more to them.
Yeah.
So we are happy to help them.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I need an
1 employee is
application
good.
when we're out of here.
You got it. You got it. And they have to be W-2 employees. I haven't bored you too much with the qualifications.
Yeah.
But to qualify for 2020, you have to be a small business. They define small business for 2020 as 100 or fewer full-time employees in 2019.
Covered.
So not FTEs. For PPP, they used FTEs. That's a full-time equivalent. So that's each part-time employee counts as half of an employee.
Okay.
That is not the case. For purposes of the ERTC, you worked 130 hours or more, or you are a part-time employee and does not count towards that total. So for 2021, they increased the size, and they say it's 500 or fewer full-time employees in 2019.
So it's based off of 2019.
Yeah, yes.
So businesses that started early 2020
May not be.
They have a separate category.
Oh,
if you
they do?
started after February 20th, 2020, you're called a recovery startup business, and they have special categories. And in fact, you have a limit on how much you can make, $50,000 a quarter, but they can take advantage of the fourth quarter of 2021. It used to be that all businesses could take advantage of that quarter also, but then in Biden's Infrastructure Investment and Tax Act, they took away the fourth quarter for all employers except for recovery startup businesses.
That's super interesting, and it sounds challenging as someone that's been in, as an attorney and then owning wineries. Like how have those skills correlated to helping educate people about how to claim more?
So I think that my education and my experience has allowed me to learn how to articulate complicated subjects to any audience. I consider that my gift.
Very much.
And so whether I'm talking with a contractor who doesn't have any formal education, I can explain to him or her exactly how this program works, and they go, oh, that makes sense. Or I can describe it to someone that has multiple PhDs.
Yeah.
And so I think that's my background. Plus, I've always been an entrepreneur. I had a plain waxing business when I was in high school, washing and waxing business. That's what I do. I'm an entrepreneur like you guys. I just love thinking of new ways to make money. They haven't all been successful.
Oh, no.
I retired once, and I lost $500,000 in a startup that I invested in and ran for a while, and I found out that I wasn't really the right guy at the right time for that.
Yeah.
So, you live and you learn. It was deep, dark days for a couple years there.
Yeah. Well, Skip, just hearing the story of how much knowledge you have on a subject and the passion that you share with us and how you've expressed how many people you've been able to affect. Let's scale this back and let's go back to where this all began. As you just mentioned, in high school, you already started with entrepreneur spirit mindedness and you started a business. Where did you grow up? Where did you come from?
Oh, I grew up in the desert, in Cathedral City specifically, which is next to Palm Springs.
Okay.
Blue collar neighborhood. And I don't know, from day one I wanted to learn to read, and I had a newspaper route. So I read the newspaper every day, and then I started in junior high school, I started reading the Wall Street Journal, and I would just read, and this is what I want to do. I want to run companies. I want to make a lot of money.
Yeah. And so talk us through a couple of those business ventures along the way.
So I had the plain washing and waxing business. I hired local kids to do the work, and then, let's see, when I was in college, I started a tuxedo company, rental company. Didn't work out real well, but I just always kept trying to start other business. But I was president of my high school, and then I was president of my university, and I was president of the bar association for my student bar association at my law school. So I had this drive to try and excel and do the best I could with the little bit God gave me.
Yeah.
And it's been fun. And all those experiences add up. I mean, when I was president of a university, a UC campus, I had the opportunity to travel around the state and meet politicians and business people and other student leaders. And it just adds to your repertoire and your background and your comprehension of how things work.
Yeah, it puts you in front of a lot of conversation, right?
Exactly.
Conversation can also be sales. Like you're communicating with somebody, you have a point, you have a topic, you have a goal with how that conversation is going to see its way through. And at some point you also learn salesmanship. And I think that's one of the things that I'm picking up just from getting to know you today is that there's such a passion you have for the way you can express and communicate that you could sell, an Eskimo ice in a heartbeat.
Well, that's nice of you to say, but just like the two of you, it's very clear to me you like to meet people.
Yep.
And I think that is an inherent thing you have to be successful as an entrepreneur. Each new person has a story. I mean, that's what you do. You're investigating their stories. Everyone has a story. Every person driving next to you on the freeway, they have a story. They have a life. History. It's really fascinating. And so you have to enjoy meeting people and asking them questions. My favorite book I've ever read was Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And if you read that, and I've read it probably 15 times, you hearty in your approbation and lavish in your praise, but you have to be genuine. You have to really care. So you don't just ask the question as a filler, a topic, conversation filler.
Yeah.
You ask the question because you want to hear what they have to say. And he said, the more interested you are, the more interesting you will be.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So other than working with me on the ERTC, I really recommend that you read How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's a fantastic book. The other book, if I may, is The Richest Man in Babylon. It's only 82 pages, I think. And I really wish I had read that when I was younger. It's a bunch of parables about how to manage your money and what not to do with your money and everything. And if I had read that book, I wouldn't have invested in that startup and lost that $500,000 in an industry I didn't know anything about, right?
Yeah.
So those are the two books I really recommend for people.
Good. Nice.
Well, now you can look at that startup and be like, well, it's a good reason to read The Richest Man in Babylon.
That's
and
right.
Educate others on that. I really like that that idea of just loving to meet people. I think that's what makes good salesmanship. I think it really genuinely caring about what other people's lives are like, their stories. But I'm curious, you mentioned a couple of things, the drive to be really good at making businesses and to make a lot of money. But I'm curious, why is that important to you, Skip? Like, all the money in the world doesn't mean anything.
I don't know. Why do I breathe? It's just something I've always loved. I'll tell you what it is. When I was born in Logan, Utah. My parents were in college, and we didn't have any money at all. But I did have a very wealthy grandfather. So when I was 4, my grandmother died in a car accident. So we packed up and we moved out to Palm Springs to be near my grandfather. And I walked into his house. I could not, because we had lived in a basement apartment where it snowed, we couldn't open our door, right? And all of a sudden I walked in and he had white wool carpeting throughout, and he had incredible paintings, and there was always music. They had a music system, so there was always nice quiet background music. And I walked in and I said, oh my God, this is for me. This is for me. And then when I was 12, my dad said, look, I think you should start playing tennis. We have a country club out here. And so for the first time, I drove into a country club, and I was like, oh my God, look at this. Every house is perfect. The lawns everything is perfect. And I go, okay, this is for me. So those sort of things from a young age sort of drive you to want those things. So I remember when I moved here from Los Angeles, I was able to join a country club in Rancho Santa Fe. Oh my God, it was like a dream come true for me.
Yeah, that's a good one too. All right, so Skip, Coomber Consulting, you've got a lot of different things, an attorney, wineries, multiples, one coming soon. Is Coomber Consulting, is that the focus of the ERTC tax credit, and that's the business that your partner Jonathan is a part of our group, and that's what we're here to help you grow ultimately?
That's right, thank you. That's what I put 95% of my effort into 7 days a week. I have someone very capable running the wine company.
Okay.
And he has, from the beginning, he has the ability to make any and all decisions for the business.
Got it.
So we talk daily, we meet daily if I'm in town, and he presents what he's going to do to me, but I've never vetoed any decision that he has made. Okay. So I don't have to be engaged every day.
Yeah.
It's fun to have a winery because I can go in and meet new people, and it's fun, and it's gratifying to the ego to have your name on 100,000 bottles of wine.
Yeah.
But that's not where I'm most useful in the world right now. I am helping businesses and nonprofits when they get these checks. I had a nonprofit CEO come into the winery one night, and he said, "Oh yeah, the ERTC, Skip, we are so excited. Our CPA is going to get us $1.3 million." I said, wait, you have like 300 employees. He said, yeah. And I said, there's no chance you're going to get less than $4 million. He said, are you serious? I said, yeah. So the CPA is using what we call the CPA test, the gross receipts test. He is not looking at the government orders test, which is much more expansive and much more beneficial to the business owner and legitimate. He said, well, are you sure? And I said, Bill. So he put me in touch with his people. I met with them, I explained it to them, and 6 weeks ago, they received checks totaling $5.1 million.
Wow.
So that's a heck of a delta between 1.3 and 5.1 million. So we're very good at what we do. And I didn't state this earlier, I am not a tax attorney, I'm a business attorney. So as I looked at, well, what's the most legitimate thing? I partner with these tax attorneys. So they are qualified. They write a qualification memo, very detailed, in case the IRS ever calls, says, well, how did you qualify? They could send them that. Might be up to 10 pages long. They figure out how much you're entitled to, and then they actually draft the 941Xs, and they sign them as preparer. Then they send them to the business owner, who prints them up, has to sign it with ink pen. Then they scan them, get them back to the law firm. They send them to the IRS, and then we have the waiting game. But part of this is the tax law firm gives the employer a free audit guarantee. So if the IRS ever calls, they just forward it over to the tax law firm, and they do all the work for free, up and through if there was ever any litigation. There won't be litigation on this. The IRS is not going to probably pursue businesses that qualified under the government orders test.
Yeah.
Because it said, as I may have said earlier, a business qualifies if its operations were suspended permanently or temporarily by a legitimate government order. There's no threshold, there's no financial component. And that's why CPAs are uncomfortable with it, because it's not black and white. The other test, the gross receipts test, all they're doing is comparing your gross revenue from each of the 6 ERTC quarters to that same quarter in 2019. And for 2020, you had to go down 80% in gross revenue, 80%. And then for 2021, you had to decrease by only 20% or more. But the problem with that test is we had such rampant inflation during COVID that a business may have still been losing money, but they had to keep raising their prices, so their gross revenue probably didn't drop sufficiently. So for a CPA, they just look at, compare it, okay, you qualify for these 2 quarters, done. Or, which we hear every day, our CPA told us we don't qualify because we didn't lose money. I said, okay, they're not looking at the lawyer's test. They're not looking at the government orders test. Let us do that for you. And in fact, we represent a number of businesses now that went through and did it with the CPA, because you can still amend again an unlimited period, a number of times in those 3 years. So we are representing businesses and getting in that delta, which is generally 70% that they left on the table using only the gross receipts test.
Wow.
So if you were profitable, you don't qualify, or you still could potentially qualify if you were more profitable than prior year?
So there are 2 tests. One has to do with not profitability, just gross revenue.
Gross revenue.
The second one only has to do with were your operations suspended. So let's take an example of a restaurant. Well, they were shut down.
Yeah.
Then when they were allowed to open, there were many iterations they had to go through, depending on which city and county they were in, because they all had different rules. But essentially, when they could open, they had to have 6 to 8 feet between their tables. So now their occupancy level dropped.
Right.
That's an interruption of their business, and they qualify for that quarter, for each quarter that was the case. Now, then someone will say, well, we are an essential business. Let's take, for example, a dentist or a doctor's office, a surgeon or a surgery center. Well, we are essential. Yes, but you weren't allowed to perform elective procedures. And for most practices, medical practices, that's going to be 20 to 40% of their practice. And so you couldn't take anyone that it wasn't a mandatory, a very, very important operation. So they qualify for those quarters that those rules were in place. And it's as any government order, so it could be the health department, could be an individual health inspector. I'll give you an example. We represent someone that owns 6 convenience stores. And one of the situations, he said the health inspector walked in and said, you can't have that self-serve soft drink dispenser. And then he came in another time and said, you can't have that self-serve coffee. And these people have to be 6 feet apart. So that is a legitimate government order. They had to comply. And so you get the idea.
Got it.
Wow.
So it's just, there's no financial component. And the CPAs seem to have a problem. And I'm not trying to put down CPAs. What they do very well. The problem is Congress threw in this legal analysis into this test. And because everyone had their CPA help them with their PPP loan, they assumed, well, this is just another thing like that. But it's not. It's very complicated.
Yeah.
And calculating how much you're entitled to is complicated. It's 50% of the first $10,000 in wages for each W-2 employee in 2020, and 70% of the first $10,000 in wages for each W-2 employee in each of the first 3 quarters of 2021. And so it gets complicated. Like I said, you have to take into account the PPP loan or loans. Anyway, that's what this tax law firm does, and they do it really well.
Awesome. All right. Well, folks, Skip Coomber Consulting, you have all kinds of opportunities out there. If you haven't heard of this, you need to reach out to these guys, have a conversation. Again, there's lots of money out there. There's multiple ways that you qualify. Don't take no for an answer. If you haven't talked to the right resources, this is your resource. We're hoping to help you guys out, and that's what NCNG is all about. It's about helping local entrepreneur individuals connect with the community, get our connections all together. We're almost 40 members large with 40 people who know hundreds of people, all of a sudden we're talking about millions of connections that we have together. And that's what NCNG is all about, is about bringing people together, connecting people, and helping each other grow successful businesses and connect to the community. Dave?
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to get to really know the fine details of the ERTC, because that's huge. It's like life-changing for some businesses after what was a pretty difficult time. So thank you for doing what you do, Skip. Where can people find more about Coomber Consulting and reach out to you to get
It's really easy. You can go to coomberconsulting.com. You can call me on my mobile phone at 858-354-3910, 858-354-3910. Or you can send me an email. It's skip@coomberconsulting.com. Either way, look forward to hearing from you. And thank you for that. By the way, when I met you at the meeting and you told me about your solar work and everything, there's something about you that I knew you were not a BSer. That you were. When I asked you a couple questions, I knew you were legitimate.
Try not to BS.
No, it was fantastic. It was fantastic. And I referred you to a neighbor of mine. And then I'm going to talk to you about the possibility of adding a battery to my solar system. So your system, your group is really great. I was very impressed. For an organization that is local, inherently local, not affiliated with a national organization, and you have a board of directors and you have bylaws. It's really impressive. In fact, I've never seen that before. So I'm really happy to get to know you and your group.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a big part of this guy and the people I found in the group.
I appreciate that, and it is a group. I started it. I had a passion for growing relationships with people. I'm an entrepreneur, multiple businesses, have always been a hustler like you as a kid, always was hustling, always wanted more than the next guy did. And after watching us grow a group within a corporate setting, I was like, we could do this better. We could do this our own, and we don't have to pay anybody to do it. And we can make this thing what we want to make it, because no one's going to tell us we can't, because we're the ones who run it.
Yeah.
And so we kind of built it with the passion of the people, and versus thinking about it as a business, doing it as a passion project where people can benefit and people can get to know each other and succeed and grow business. So it's all being done from the right places. So glad to have you and Jonathan as a part of it. And again, guys, we are NCNG, North Coast Networking Group. We do meet once a week, every Thursday at Beach Plum Kitchen in Carlsbad. We meet from 7:15 to 8:30. If you're a local entrepreneur and a small business owner and you want to grow your relationships, want to grow your business, come check us out. You can look us up on the web at www.northcoastnetworkinggroup.com. You can find us on socials at NCNG, on Instagram, and on Facebook. So if you want to grow, we're the place. That's another wrap on an episode here at North Coast Coffee Chats. Special thanks to our shout out member, Max Lux Media, for hosting our awesome podcast. For all of your podcast, all of your business, photography, business, shoots, drone work, you name it, Max Lux Media is the place to contact. Rob would love to talk to you, help you set up your business content. And cheers, fellas.
And as I mentioned earlier, if I may, real quickly, I cannot believe how sophisticated this studio is. I'm excited about the quality of this production.
They've nailed it.
I'm telling you, because I filmed at 2 other places, and neither of them were nearly as sophisticated as this operation. So kudos to you. Yeah. Thanks, guys.